Welcome back and moving on to our last segment for today. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're talking about our children, and in particular, we're talking about the behavior of our children and how to deal with any negative behavior. While many people, they believe that the punishment is the only solution for this, but maybe on the other side, this is the beginning of the problem. Today, we have with us Dr. Sanaa Sabet, and she is a development mentor. She will tell us more about this idea or this topic. First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
As we were talking before going on air, you have kindly noted that you have been in the educational field for the past 30 years. If you can tell us a bit, just a quick recap about your experience in dealing with the children, and what are the most common misconceptions about the discipline or the disciplinary behavior of children?
Sure. I've been in education now for over 30 years, both internationally and in Egypt. I've also dealt with families internationally and in Egypt. And I found that it was the same both abroad and in Egypt. Punishment is a word that people associate with aggression and feeling very angry and reacting in order to fix a problem. Punishment is not necessarily a good thing, because what happens is when you punish a child, the child goes into what we call, adopts the 4 R's of punishment. First of all, they resent. They feel, oh my goodness, why did I do wrong? Because mostly the child may not understand what they've done wrong. Parents don't take the time to explain to their kids the problem. Second one is he may seek revenge, because invariably throughout our life there is a power struggle between the parent and the child.
Yeah.
And so subsequently the child will say, okay, you won this time, but I'm going to get you, and do something else later on. They can retreat, they can become saying, okay, I'll do it next time, but I won't get caught, and they can be sneaky, or they can rebel. Okay? The sneaky part is not so good, because there's also the part in this retreating section that the child kind of pause. He decides that, okay, I'm not good enough, so I'm going to please my parents and I'm not going to do anything else. Well, that's not very good. The child invariably puts this in their subconscious, and as they grow older, it affects them. I mean, if you yourselves think of a time when you felt that somebody humiliated you or mistreated you, see how you felt. The same thing happens with a child.
Yeah.
We're talking about different methods of punishing, and actually this is something of great importance as well, because maybe it has to be of the same level of what the child committed. For example, it differed from the past a lot, and definitely nowadays we can see this taking place still, unfortunately, in a very abused way.
Absolutely. Different methods of punishment. I mean, when a parent gets angry and frustrated, the immediate result is the brain goes into primitive mode, and the first thing they think about is striking out. They either hit the child or
They're grounded.
Absolutely, even worse, they actually tell the child that you're an idiot and you don't understand anything. In which case the child then grows up believing that they're an idiot, or you must do this or I will not like you, or oh, go away, you're a horrible person. This is not very good style of punishment.
This is not referable at all.
It is not repairable, because the child, as I said, goes into a mode where they resent you, they rebel against you. Well, this is what you want me to do, I won't do it. The best way to do is to try to treat the child with respect, as the child is a human being. The child, from a very young age, at the age of 2, can understand what you're trying to say. You can guide the child. I'm not saying that you have to force your own personality on the child, because that's not what it's all about. Punishment, in a modern sense, is now called logical consequence. And the logical consequence is basically working on the solution rather than working on the problem that happened. I mean, I've had people who, when I was at school, who would cry and cry because they got 98 out of 100. And they were very afraid that their parents are going to punish them by either hitting them or making them sit at home over the weekend and study, which is not really very conducive to helping a child learn life skills and become an experienced human being.
Doctor, how can we strike a balance? Because also, on the other hand, some would say that if you won't punish your child, he's going to be raised up like loosely, and he's going to be spoiled, and so on and so forth. And if you punish, then there might be some negative consequences. So, what is the ideal way, or how can you strike a balance, as I mentioned?
Well, the ideal way is something, unfortunately, because of the pressures of modern day life, we're actually moving away from the family unit concept. What you need to do is to involve your child in decisions. For example, I had a mother who had a child who was very forgetful. And one of the things that he forgot every day was his lunch. And every day she would take his lunch to school because she doesn't want him to feel that he hasn't eaten, and she doesn't want to appear, and this is very important, in front of others that she is a bad mother. Then eventually she found out that she couldn't do this anymore. And after talking together, we decided to take some action. She had a meeting, a family meeting, and this is what I suggest that all parents do these days, is to have a family meeting once a week to discuss things with their children, to reset rules. It doesn't matter about the age of the child. Obviously, the younger they are when you start, the better it is. But to set the rules. For example, when the mother started to talk to the child, she says, I realize that sometimes you're in a hurry in the morning, but your lunch is very important. And to be quite honest, I really don't have the time to take it to school anymore. So if you don't remember to take your lunch, because it is your responsibility, this is again teaching the child responsibility.
Then it's your mistake.
Then you will have to go without. Obviously, because she talked to the child, okay, maybe. And then when he got to school and he forgot the lunch, the teacher, of course, felt bad for the child, so she gave him the money to buy the lunch. The mistake here was that there was no communication between the school and the mother. When the mother communicated to the teacher and the child actually went hungry for one day, then they realized that, okay, this is...
I won't ever forget my lunch.
I will never forget my lunch
You know
again.
what I liked the most out of the story is the attitude of the teacher.
Yes.
That such a teacher still exists.
Oh, they do, really. Some of them are very kind, and they feel that the mothers are very cruel sometimes for letting their kids come to school without lunch or whatever. But in actual fact, I believe I'm one of those people who've always stipulated that there must be communication between the home and school, because we're a continuation of the home. And whatever you set at home must be continued at school, and the teachers should know about it so that they can continue with it.
Go on.
I was going to ask you about throughout your professional career, what was the major challenges that you have faced in this regard?
I felt there was a big change in recent years. I came back in Egypt 16 years ago, and when I started working in the school, I felt that the parents have changed. People have become what we call very promotive. In other words, the attitude of, I'm not going to punish, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to let my child do what they want. So basically what happened is they were bringing up students who were basically not responsible. Why should I bother doing something if everything is being done for me at home? And the expectation was transformed to the school. So basically, it was very difficult for the teachers to realize this at first, because you don't think about the fact that at home, mom does everything. She does the food, she gets the clothes out, she irons the clothes, she puts
the bed.
Absolutely everything, you know, beck and call. I want this, so she goes out of her way to get this, and so the child has expectations that the world owes him a living. What happened was, I was principal of an American international school, and there came a time when grades were very important. And people decided that they wanted their kids to go to these new schools that started to come out. And one parent came to me and she said, I'm worried that my son will not get to university because he's not going to get the grade, compete with the other students and get the grades. And I said to her, fine, you do that. If you want to change your son, you're perfectly welcome to change your son to a different school. But what are you teaching him? What are you telling him? That if he's not happy with his wife, you're going to divorce him? if he can't do his job, you're going to get him another job. Basically, education, unlike many people think, does not take place at university. It happens in school and as you're growing up. So what are you doing to your child? You think that he's going to get the grades because he's going to another school and he's going to get the GPA? That's not going to help your child whatsoever. So this was the problem. The parents, every time a child goes home, oh, my teacher did this and I'm so unhappy, the parent is there in the school.
They go and retaliate.
Why is the teacher doing this? What did you find out? What happened? I always tell parents, first of all, let your child calm down. Then take the time to actually listen and go into his life. What does it mean go into his life? It means that make him feel that you understand what he's going through. For example, I had a young girl who came and she couldn't deal with her son because he kept having problems with his teacher. So her son came home and I had a problem with my teacher and he was crying and she insulted me in front of my students, etc., etc., etc. Well, okay, the first thing she did was she stood there with her hands on her hips and says, what have you done? You must have done something to upset her. And then she realized that the child says, I haven't done anything. The child immediately says, I haven't done anything, and shuts up and doesn't say what's going on. And then they said, are you going to go to school and tell her off? And mother said, yeah, sure, tomorrow I'm going to go and see your teacher. Well, when she thought about it, and she actually talked with me, and I told her, look, you should always let the child calm down, and then put yourself in his position. Tell him, look, I understand what you're going through. I know it must have been hard for you to get told off by your teacher in front of your students. You must have felt very bad. Okay? And that immediately gets the child to feel that you're on his side. You're not attacking him. And that's the idea of positive discipline. You don't attack the child, you work on the solution. So what happened exactly? And the child starts to say, okay, I got up and the teacher told us not to get up out of our desk without permission, but I didn't have a pen, and I got up to borrow a pen from my friends, and my teacher told me off. Okay, so what can we do to avoid this problem next time? And get him to give you the solution. And if he doesn't give you the solution, then suggest solutions. But don't tell him, you've got to do this. When you tell kids, you've got to do this, they will resent you badly. And that's the thing.
Also, something that I believe is very, very important when it comes to the kids, actually to have a balanced relationship between the mother and the father as well. Because sometimes the father, because he's always at work, he is always pampering the child, even sometimes he breaks the word of the mother unintentionally. Or sometimes the child is very much wicked, actually. He knows when to go to ask the mother, when to go to ask the father, and something like this. How do you see this? I've seen this many different times, actually. Something that is really very, very common.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, parents don't agree with each other as to how they're going to bring their children up. When you have a child, it is vital that you decide and you make a point that you're going to bring your child up in a certain way. And you have to agree on a policy of, this is the way we're going to do it, and if I say this, we have to discuss it together, say the opposite, because children are very, very smart, and they know how to get away with murder if you let them. So it's very important that the parents are on the same wavelength.
Dr. allow us just to go for a short break, and we'll be back to resume this remaining segment of The Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International.
A message from the Egyptian children to the whole world. علمونا في مدرستنا ازاي نحبها، نخاف عليها طول حياتنا ونحمي أرضها. فهمنا يعني ايه بلادي، تحية العالم ننادي لك يا حبي وفؤادي. بنحبك يا مصر، احنا اللي هنحافظ عليها، ندي مستقبلنا فيها.
Welcome back, and still we are talking about the leaders of the future. and how important it is to avoid the common mistakes, to contain the anger, because also dealing with an angry child is not that easy, just as you mentioned right now.
Absolutely. An angry child is a discouraged child. There must be a reason for it. And the best thing for the parent to do when the child is angry is to just sort of either take them in their arms and hug them, which makes them calm down a little bit, and then say, okay, look, I really love you very much, and I'd like to help you, but I need you to calm down. So could you please go to your room for now, and we can talk about it in a few minutes. And that's exactly what happens. A child sometimes has a tantrum, and then the parent doesn't know what to do. So the automatic thing, of course, is to revert to the fact, and then they shake them and they stop what you're doing and all of this. And the child...
And maybe they're not aware of the tantrum as well, because this is something of great importance for mothers to understand what is it about and how to deal with it in a positive way.
Okay, I had a mother who asked me a question the other day. She said, my child, she is 6 years old, and every time we go to school and we pass the supermarket, she wants a certain type of sweet. And if I don't stop and buy it for her, she screams and she cries and she keeps crying and screaming, and I can't deal with it. So I go and give her the sweet. All right? That's not the right thing to do, because the child automatically understands that all she has to do, or all he has to do, is to scream and have a tantrum, and the parent will do exactly what they want. I know it's hard. It's really difficult to listen to a child scream and kick for 40 minutes. But once you do it and you let them get on with it and not give them what they want, they soon learn. However, there is a time when they will test you again, but they will soon learn that you won't give them what they want. It's not right every time a child screams and cries that you should give them what they want. Just take them in your arms and say, look, all right, I know you want this, but let's go, we're going to school, for example, or let's go and do something else. Redirect the attention to something else. If they won't stop, just let them get on with it, because a child who's having a tantrum without an audience will not really have a tantrum at all. They'll find that there's nobody watching them.
Right, at the end, Dr. Sanaa Sabet, Development Mentor, thank you very much for all the tips that you have given to us today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good morning.
And dear viewers, just a quick recap of what we discussed in today's episode. We talked about the violence against women and how to combat this all kinds of violence against women through civil society groups and women's advocates organizations. We also talked about the how to raise a child properly with our guest here in the studio, an education professional. And dear viewers, you're in the company of Nashwa Rashid and Karim Gamal Eddin. Until we meet again, this is goodbye.